Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So I wanted to break down the trailer for episode 3 of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon. It looks like a lot of stuff is going to be happening here in this episode. I think this trailer actually gave away a pretty big death, I would say, for the series here in general, because it's a character from season 1. And it looks like Carol is going to see the Super Walkers here in this episode. So yeah, I do want to talk about this and sort of break down the trailer here and get some predictions for episode 3. So before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you want to get more Walking Dead content like this. And also please be aware that this will contain spoilers for episode 2 of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon season 2. So yeah, and also I will be doing some episode 2 videos later on tonight talking about some of the bigger scenes, because obviously the episode's coming out on cable in just a couple of hours, and so a lot of people are going to be watching the episode then. And so yeah, stay tuned for that. Episode 2 was just a great episode, honestly. I've just been seeing positive reactions to it, so really great to see. But this trailer here starts off with the ceremony of I guess Laurent, and so I'm guessing what is happening here is this is going to be a ceremony to make everyone here really believe in Laurent, because I guess people do sort of believe in Laurent in general, but I guess there's a lot of skepticism overall in terms of, is he the cure and can he really, I guess, end the apocalypse, right? And so everyone's really interested in that, because I think that Laurent, you know, in terms of, I guess, the prophecy that we learned, again, in episode 2, we sort of learned a lot of details regarding this. It seems like Lo Sang may have been, you know, one of the few that in the very beginning sort of talked about this prophecy overall and sort of believed that Laurent obviously was the cure in some way. And so, I mean, I sort of get it in a way, like if you do believe that, you know, there is going to be a cure to all of this, or if there's going to be something like that, I mean, it just makes sense overall that if you hear of a story of somebody being born from a walker, I mean, that's like a miracle, right? So I do get that from you know, Lo Sang's perspective and point of view. And so I think that for the Nest, that's what they want to really, you know, I guess show to everybody here, is that this is all very real. And so obviously, I guess demonstrating if Laurent can survive a walker bite would really convince everybody here. And then all of a sudden, the Union of Hope is very, very powerful, right? Like if that's actually true, and that's the thing too, like if that is actually true, like the Union of Hope would be the most powerful group, I would say, in the entire world, because you actually have somebody who is the cure, right? And so I do want to talk about that storyline later on, because I do think that this storyline is coming to an end. I think in episode 3, I mean, maybe it doesn't come to an end in this episode, but like I don't see Laurent dying here in this episode. I really don't, because first of all, there's a lot of shots in like previous trailers and whatnot where you see him in just like different locations other than the Nest. And so I think that we're going to see a lot more still from Laurent. And so I think that whatever happens here at the ceremony, he's obviously going to get away. And I do think that it is Daryl, right? I do think that Daryl and Isabel are actually going to help Laurent here. They're going to save him. And I mean, I don't know where this is going. I always think I know like very specific things where I've like figured everything out, but then there's always things that happen that just completely throw me off. Like I thought that the Nest battle was happening in episode 2, but no, that seems like it's happening in episode 3 now. So I believe though that, you know, in terms of the timeline of everything, even if it's not happening in 2, that the same events are still going to happen. Like the Nest battle is going to happen in episode 3, but it's going to end with, I guess, Daryl and Isabel captured by Pouvoir. And so because of what we learned about the Nest, I do think that the Nest is probably going to give Daryl and Isabel to Pouvoir. Like I really do see it playing out like that, because in this shot here, and again, this is not in the episode 3 trailer, but this happens, I think, in the Comic-Con trailer, or it was like a previous trailer, but you do see that Daryl is actually captured by a group of people here, and I don't think that this is Pouvoir. I think Pouvoir and their soldiers have different outfits, right? So I think this is actually the Union of Hope, and so I think that the Nest is actually going to take Daryl and Isabel and bring them to Pouvoir. Like, I don't see them giving up their location, so that's kind of why I'm saying that. Maybe because of what happens in the episode in terms of Carol's storyline with Madame Janae and all of that Pouvoir eventually finds out, because at the end of episode 2, we did see some stuff with Cadron and the Nest and stuff, so I feel like maybe they find out somehow in episode 3, and so that leads to Daryl and Isabel getting captured at the very end of episode 3. Maybe that's how all that plays out, but I could definitely see Lo Sang and I guess the Nest in general just literally capturing Daryl and Isabel because of this shot here of Daryl, and then just bringing them to Pouvoir and being like, okay, so you take Daryl and Isabel, but leave Laurent and us alone, right? Though I don't know what's going to happen with Laurent, because if, you know, they're captured, I just don't see Laurent literally, I guess, staying at the Nest. I could see him, I guess, being taken away somewhere else. Like, I don't know where exactly. I'm just trying to think, because if they're taken, then, like, Laurent would have to be, like, where? Because if he's with Pouvoir's just trying to get rid of him, right? And so if he goes back to the Nest, then they're going to do that whole ceremony thing again with him getting bit by a walker. So I just think that it makes sense for him to go somewhere else. But again, there's a lot of stuff with the story here that things could go in different ways. Maybe Laurent is just held captive, and then they have this big plan for Laurent or whatever. whatever, but then Daryl eventually escapes and saves Laurent. So we'll have to see where this goes here. But there's actually some shots here, and this is why I think it's kind of revealing in the trailer that they would actually have some scenes in the trailer of this, because first of all, we do see Daryl, and it looks like that they're actually, you know, they made it to the nest, and so they were actually able to get there. And I do like the attention to detail there, because in the very beginning of episode 2, there was actually a mention of the fact that, okay, well, the water's coming in, so we're gonna have to leave right now before the water, you know, I guess comes in, and then we can't leave at all. So they all leave very fast, and I guess the water eventually, you know, comes in, so that obviously no one can leave or I guess get to the nest. And that's why at the very end of episode 2, they're forced to wait, because, you know, they can't really get there. There's too much water. And so at some point, obviously, they are going to get through. And I do think it's going to be a really cool scene here, because we have this one shot here of Laurent. And again, we see Lo Sang here sort of standing to the left, and Laurent is in front of somebody who is a walker. And so I think that this is sort of what they were talking about in episode 2, which is, you know, I think they're going to show people that he is immune to the walkers and stuff. And so they have a walker here. And the interesting thing about this is, first of all, episode 2 ends on a cliffhanger where Sylvie is basically in a really bad situation because she sees that Laurent is alive. Like, she finds him there at the nest, right? So she realizes, okay, something really bad is happening here. And that's sort of where the episode ends. And so what happened to Sylvie? Well, I think that this actually could be Sylvie, because if you zoom in on the shot, that really looks like Sylvie. Like, honestly, it really does look like her. So I think that there's a really good chance this honestly could be a really big reveal in the episode here, that Sylvie is actually a walker, and they're going to try and make Sylvie, I guess, turn Laurent to a walker, or I guess demonstrate the fact that, you know, Laurent can't turn, right? Because they all believe that he can't. And that's what's kind of insane about this whole scene in general, is the fact that they actually believe that Laurent is going to be able to actually survive a walker bite. Like, I just think that's kind of insane. Like, they're all really in that belief that this is actually, you know, something that can happen. And so I think that this is probably Sylvie. I do think that it makes a lot of sense, because they really, again, in episode 2, they really focused on her quite a bit. And so I really do think that that's likely going to be something that happens here. I don't know if it's halfway through the episode or when it happens, really, but I think Sylvie likely died there. And I think that's absolutely insane. And like, if Lo Sang is responsible for that, I mean, that completely changes my opinion of the nest. Like, I should already believe that the nest is a bad place in general, but, you know, I think because of season 1, like, they were all telling us, like, the nest is a really amazing place, like, it's going to be so amazing when we get there, this and that the fact that they're actually doing things like this, like, this is, I mean, Daryl and Isabel and Laurent have to get out of here, because it's a really, really horrible place. And if Sylvie's actually dead here, like, it's going to be a really big reveal here. I think Laurent is going to be completely shocked by this. There's actually a shot here of Isabel, and you could tell that this is during the ceremony. So at some point, Daryl and Isabel are going to show up here to the ceremony. We don't see Daryl here in this shot, but Isabel does show up here, and she looks shocked. So I'm assuming she's looking at Sylvie in this scene, or maybe she's seeing Laurent die, but I don't think so, because there's so many shots. Like, first of all, if you look in previous trailers and whatnot, like, there's that shot of Isabel and Laurent, and it looks like they're running away from whatever's happening here with the ceremony. So I do think that Sylvie, I think, first of all, is a walker, and so Isabel's reaction here, I think, is very, I mean, it makes sense, right? If she's seeing Sylvie as a walker, like, she's shocked because her friend died. So she's reacting to that here, and then I think later on, they're probably, I don't know what's going to happen here, but they save Laurent, and I think that they're all trying to, I guess, run away from the nest in general. We have this one shot of Lo Sang here, and it looks like he's talking to Daryl in this scene, but I think it's just the way that the trailer's cut, because I just don't see it happening. And so I do think that this episode's likely going to end with Daryl held captive. It's going to be something like that anyways, because I just think that it just makes sense for the episode overall. And again, I do think that this is going to be really one of the last times that we are at the nest. I think we're going to see this really insane thing happen here in episode 3. So I'm really excited. But the other storyline here that is happening is Carol's storyline. And it really looks like Carol is going to meet Quadrone and Madame Genet in this episode. I'm very, very excited about this. So we have Carol here, and it looks like she's, I guess, talking to people at Pouvoir, and I guess just trying to learn as much as she can, just sort of overall, right? And at one point, she actually sees Quadrone, and she starts to talk to him, and I guess he mentioned something about Daryl, and so Carol is going to learn from Quadrone, I guess, more about what's happening with Daryl. And I do think that she's going to learn from Quadrone here that Daryl is actually alive, and that maybe he's at the nest or this and that. And I think Carol is overall going to be really happy about that. And I actually think that, I mean, it really depends on the scene too, because I can see Quadrone not wanting to say anything because maybe he doesn't know who Carol is, because maybe he's like, well, I don't know who you are. Like, you could be with Madame Genet, right? And obviously he doesn't want to say anything, you know, just about where Daryl is, where the nest is, but maybe he actually did say something. Like, maybe that's why he's actually, you know, not with Madame Genet, like with where we saw him at the very end of episode 2. Like, maybe he actually said, I guess, where Daryl was, and so maybe that's why he gets captured. But I just think that, yeah, Cadron telling Carol here, I think makes a lot of sense, and so Carol is likely going to learn, I guess, of what is happening here. But the really cool thing with Carol is, first of all, there's super walkers that seem to be created here in this episode. And so I think that this is honestly really cool because we see Carol here and it looks like she's reacting to it. It's hard to say if this is related because that's the one thing about trailers is like they're cut in a certain way where it seems like the characters are reacting to something and maybe they're really not. But if she is reacting to this, I think that's actually really cool. Like, we're literally going to see Carol, I guess, reacting to super walkers for the very first time. So if this is actually happening in episode 3, I really cannot wait for episode 3. Like, this is going to be such a crazy scene. And I also wonder why they're creating the super walkers. Like, is this related to the battle at the nest? I don't think so, because that would mean that Carol is very close. And so, yeah, I don't really know why, but I think that it's possible that maybe Carol is sort of seeing the super walkers here for the first time. So yeah, really interesting scene. But then we have this one shot here of Carol on a horse. And so at this point here, it looks like Carol is escaping, I guess, Pouvoir. Like, I don't think she's going to be there for too long, but because she is alone here and it looks like she's running away, I feel like at this point she knows where Daryl is. She's learned, I guess, some information about where Daryl is, and so now she's actually trying to get to him and get away from Pouvoir. I do think she's going to be actually taken captive here at some point, though, because of previous trailers where we do see Carol or trying to get away on this horse and then eventually ends up with Pouvoir, because I guess they blocked off some of the streets here, right? And so, yeah, I think that's exactly what's going to happen here, and I don't know where the episode ends, but I think that if Carol is taken captive here, and then I guess Daryl is taken captive in this episode, I think you can sort of see where a reunion could potentially happen here, right? It's probably not going to happen in episode 3, but I guess it could. It literally could end with that. Like, again, before the season started, a lot of the talk was like, well, when are they going to reunite? And I always thought it was going to be the end of episode 2 or like in episode 3. And now that we're 2 episodes in, and it doesn't really seem like it's going to happen anytime soon, I mean, it's got to happen, I guess, at some point in the next, like, what, 2 episodes? Because we're 2 episodes in. I mean, I think that it just makes sense that you're going to see Daryl and Carol together a lot this season, right? So I think that in episode 3, maybe that's how it ends, right? Like, the first half, it's sort of a build up to Daryl and Carol reuniting. And that's where, like, I guess that first half ends, is with Daryl and Carol reuniting. And then episode 4, I guess they sort of escape from here, and then we'll see, I guess, what happens at that point. But yeah, that's some early predictions of mine anyways. I don't know if that's where they're going to go overall, but I could see it, I guess, going in that direction. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, then we have this one shot of Madame Genet, and I do think that she's likely talking with Carol here in this scene. So yeah, obviously really, really exciting here. And then the final shot of the trailer in which we see Carol and I guess the Mona Lisa in the background here. So just really cool. Honestly, I really can't wait for this episode here. And so yeah, post all your thoughts down below. Post your predictions for episode 3. What do you think is going to happen in this episode? Hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Make sure to be a subscriber if you want more Walking Dead content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.